sweet.
I'm not defensive about it. Come on!
Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a live stream and match preview for Panathinaikos versus Chelsea in the Conference League. Yes, we're back in action in Europe. This is actually the first time the two sides, I think, have ever played each other. So, yeah, I don't think that happens too often, but here we go. First time we've ever played Panathinaikos, and it's an opportunity to see a different group of players, an opportunity for guys to stake their claim and show that they should be getting more of a look in the Premier League and a chance to quickly bounce back from, obviously, the disappointing defeat to Liverpool on Sunday. But there's loads to dive into: the Josh Akinpong situation, the Conference League in general, and all that good stuff. I'd like to be joined by Dan. Mate, thank you for coming. Pleasure to catch up as always. It wouldn't be Chelsea without some sort of weird situation going on. And things have been pretty smooth so far this season. We've been doing pretty well. But then yesterday you get the news that Chelsea have basically, well, it depends how you want to look at this. You could look at this in different ways, and we'll break it down. But you get the news that Josh Akinpong's been frozen out by the club until he signs a new contract. Won't be available for selection for the first team or the development side until he pens a new deal. Now, where do you stand on this, bro? Because for me, I think it's a pretty hard line to take on someone who, one, has only played twice for the first team, has never started a game for us. He's still got 18 months, best part of that, on his contract. Why are we... And if you want him to sign a new deal, telling him he can't play until he signs one is hardly a way to get him to commit his long-term future to the football club. What's to say that if he signs a new long-term deal, that he's not going to play much anyway? So we have seen Chelsea take this hardline stance with players going into the last year. They don't want players going into the final 12 months. I get that, but was there any need for this to be so public? You know, I understand with like your Chilwells and your Sterlings because journalists were asking about it in press conferences and stuff. No one's been asking, oh, why is Josh Akinpong not playing more? I mean, bro, where do you stand on this one? I think it's a bit of a weird one, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he only just signed a new contract as well.
He did, mate. Literally signed it last year. Or earlier this year, even. Yeah.
There's rumours, isn't there, obviously coming from Real Madrid, that they're quite interested in him and they see him as potentially a player they'd like to get on their books. And I think as soon as that happens, Chelsea, like the money signs light up in Chelsea's eyes and they think, right, hang on, his contract isn't valuable enough. We need to try and get him on more so that if he's ever going to leave, we get a decent amount of compensation for him because of his age. So I'm not sure. I think me and you have agreed on this a number of times that it's all just too public for me at Chelsea at the moment when it comes to contracts and that sort of thing. And I get it with Chilwell and players like that, but you can't deny that it also does harms to those deals as well. That the fact that it's so public that those players are unwanted, like Trevor Chalobah in terms of him during the summer, Conor Gallagher, obviously publicly, the contract was out there, I think, and Mason Mount. It's just been a little bit too public for me, all these contract discussions. And to do it to such a young kid, like it just, I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me. I don't think it's the right approach to be taken.
No, I agree, mate. Obviously, we know that, well, I didn't realise this, I found it out the other day, that obviously when you're under 18 or 18 and under, when you sign your first pro contract, you can only sign 2 years plus the remainder of whatever's left of that season. So it's not like he could have signed any longer a deal. He only signed, I think he signed his new deal either earlier this year or last year. They couldn't physically offer him a longer contract. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, what's the rush here? Because he's still got 18 months to go. He's not really that close to being near the end. But I think what we're going to see now, bro, for me is because in the day and age of PSR, young players and academy products, they're such valuable commodities now that even with 18 months left on your contract, even if you haven't even started one game for the first team, bro, these players are of value to the football club. Even though he's not played, reportedly Real Madrid, Liverpool, Newcastle, Spurs, all these guys, all these clubs potentially looking at him. And I also wonder as well whether I worry that a lot of these young kids, do they have the right people around them? That for me is perhaps a bigger concern. How well advised are these guys getting?
Yeah, well, it all depends on what sort of background and that they might come from as well. Because in terms of the money that could be being offered, some people will just jump at that, and other people are in it for the wrong reasons around them. So yeah, I completely hear you on that. So it's obviously a point for concern. But yeah, you talk about how much of these players at 18 have barely played any first team football, are just massive commodities now. I think of how much we paid for Kellerman just to get us around some financial loopholes before the end of June. And I think about what Villa did, and a couple of other teams, Newcastle, I think, and Forest and Everton, I think were all sort of in that mix of paying extortionate amount of money just to make sure they got round loopholes. And I just think that's what Josh Acheampong is probably being viewed as here is clear profit. There's no sort of focus on him being a first team player, even though I think that window could open up, as we've seen in previous years with Gusto and Reece, that fitness concerns have been an issue. And there's always seems to be a little bit of room for a fullback to get in. We saw Lewis Hall do it, and players like that. Alfie Gilchrist last season as well was another one that actually got an opportunity. So yeah, I think they view him as a commodity because they come around to that deadline of June the 30th. They can obviously sell these players on for a sizable amount of money if they've got a good contract on them. So look, it's
I think it's difficult for Akinpong. I can understand why he'd be hesitant to sign a long-term deal and commit his future to the club purely because of the position that he plays in. And we know that Reece has had injury problems, so we're hoping that those are behind him. We know that Gusto has had a few injury issues whilst he's been at the club as well. But let's be real, these guys aren't that much older than Akinpong, Gusto's 20, 21? He's only 2 or 3 years older than Akinpong, and Reece is probably maybe 5 or 6 years older than him. It's not, for me, like I look at it and I think, well, those two are pretty much set for as long as they want to be at this football club, they're going to be sort of the 1 and 2 in that right back position. So if I'm an 18-year-old kid and I'm looking at it, there will be some opportunities, but there are absolutely clearer pathways at other clubs. And if he's looking to get in at right back, it's going to be quite tricky. And then he also kind of plays a little bit of centre back as well, but not an awful lot. And there's not really too much of a look in there either. We're probably looking at bringing in more centre back options there as well. So look, I'm not blaming the club necessarily. Like for me, we had to go and sign Gusto. We needed to do that. We needed a capable alternative option to Reece. But I hate talking about blocked pathways because I think it's almost a little bit of nonsense. Signing someone like Gusto is not a pathway blocker. But it's I get it from both sides. I do get it from both sides. But as you touched on, mate, what you do is by making it so public and by putting it out there to potentially interested clubs that he's not signing a deal, that puts you in such a weak negotiating position, and that lets other clubs know that it puts their value through the floor as well. So I don't understand, if you want to get decent money for this kid, if that's what it comes to, making it so public that he's not going to sign a new deal is you lose all your bargaining power.
Yeah, the only thing you do with it is put him in the shop window to an extent, right? That people might say, he's got a year left, looks like a talented player. We give him 5 million or give him 10 million for him. Do you know what I mean? But actually, players like that moved in the summer for like 20 million, 30 million. These type of prices were being thrown around to just get clubs through PSR loopholes. I don't know with him, to be honest. I hear what you're saying about the potential of getting in at right back's incredibly tough. I think if he bides his time, injuries will put him as second choice right back, because I just think
he would play. He'd play a bit.
I think that. I think no one expected Alfie to come through and get the minutes that he got last season. I don't think people expected Lewis Hall the season before to get the minutes that he got and get himself a £30 million move. And I think that's how Chelsea will be viewing Josh, to be honest with you. And I just hope that if he does sign the extension at Chelsea, it's one that doesn't limit him as a player going forward, because I think their worry would be if he signs a contract extension at Chelsea, does it price him out of a move somewhere else, and then he just stays for 3 years? And if he doesn't get into the first team, how many players at Chelsea have we seen do that in the past, and then their career just goes like that?
Yeah.
So
do you know what the worst thing about this situation is, right? Is we've got a few games coming up sort of in the next 5-6 days where he would have been a shoo-in to get minutes and play. For example, tomorrow night, Panathinaikos, James and Gusto haven't travelled. It's going to be Disasi playing at right back. You could argue that Akinpong could have even started that game, or he would have definitely got at least 20 or 30 minutes. European away game, intimidating atmosphere. You know what it's like in Greece. That would have been a really good, developmental experience for him. Potential opportunities away at Newcastle in the Carabao Cup next week. And you're thinking if things aren't resolved by then, this guy's missing out on good opportunities here. It's not like he's not even playing for the first team. They're not even letting him play for the 21s either. It's just like he's playing no football. I just think it's just a mess. It's just a real shame that what. But imagine us telling Conor Gallagher, for example, oh, by the way, Conor, you're not going to play for us anymore unless you sign a new deal. What we haven't done that. We've never told someone before they're not that I can remember in recent times. We've never said to someone. I mean, you might be able to remember someone, bro, but I can't remember us saying to a player, "You are not playing for us until you sign a new deal." This must be the first. This must be the first time it's happened. Certainly under this ownership, in terms of not being allowed to play.
Yeah, I think in terms of the playing, it probably is, and they probably feel they can do it because he's on the fringes, so he's not going to play. But it's probably a stance they're looking to take forward. To be honest, I felt like if a move hadn't have happened with, do you know what? The closest one was probably Ben Chilwell, and it wasn't until he obviously didn't get a move that they kind of went, look, we're going to lose a lot of value on him if we don't give him any minutes. So maybe he could play. And then actually they were like, oh, well, don't put him in the European squad where he could get minutes. We'll just leave it to League Cup games. So that's probably the closest one I can think of. I think Conor Gallagher, Pochettino had too much of a say in the matter. I think if he was out of favour, I don't think he would have got the minutes that he got last season. I think that obviously led to a massive breakdown in relationships between manager and people above him. It's just such a weird stance because I don't understand if these players are assets, why you would risk devaluing them by not allowing them to play. And like you said, perfect opportunities. He'll be actually Disasi is, if anything, the path blocker in this conversation because he's a player. Yeah, he's a player playing out of position, whereas Josh would be a player looking to play in his correct position and be given the showcase of that game, if you like, in a European competition. Eyes are on it on a Thursday night. People are like, Chelsea, they're playing this club, could be a lot of goals. Let's have a look. And then that's when you see the likes of scouts looking at that sort of game. And it's a perfect opportunity to put a player in the shop window, not to hide him from it and say, oh, maybe there's something good in the back room. Do you know what I mean? It's just crazy. And other people, if they're not Chelsea fans, they won't even have had much idea about this, to be honest with you. So they don't even know Josh is there to be had. Do you know what I mean? To start getting a social media drive to sign him.
But also though, by not playing him, right? Even if he decides to leave, think what it would do for his value potentially if he plays and does well against Panathinaikos, if he plays and does well in a Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. Think what that will do for his value. Like, I get it, like there's going to be contract issues with players. That's what happens in football. But to tell someone they're not playing, like who hasn't really disrespected the club. I don't know what's gone on. The reports saying that they thought they had a deal agreed and then it wasn't agreed. Is that because, other clubs were talking to him? Is that because he's been badly advised by his agents or his reps or whoever it might be? Or actually maybe hold off signing that because something better might come in, or we can use another offer from a club to get us a better deal from Chelsea maybe? I don't know. But ultimately there's no winners here because Akinpong doesn't win. And Chelsea don't particularly win either, because when it comes to moving him on, if that's what happens, we've devalued what might be quite a valuable asset. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that situation. But it's a real shame because I would have liked to have seen him tomorrow. But at least, in the travelling squad, there are some other youngsters. There's Tyreek George, who is probably the most likely of them to get minutes. I think there was a couple of young guys that played in the Premier League Cup on Monday or Tuesday night against Bournemouth. I can't exactly remember their names. There's Raksaki and someone called Shim Maheka, potentially. I think that's how you say his name. They're very young kids. I think they've maybe just gone for the experience. I'd be surprised if the latter two made the bench. I think Tyreek George could well get minutes, but the academy kids and stuff, they are getting a chance. Youngsters are getting a chance. But I mean, bro, I wanted to cover a couple of other things in Maresca's press conference. Mudryk was an interesting one. We finally found out why he was left out of the squad for Liverpool. And I'm not really as I say, not buying. I don't agree with the reasons that Maresca's gave. He obviously called it a technical decision. Now, I would have thought, one, Mudryk's done pretty well in his last few games. I would have thought, for example, that bringing him on to run at Joe Gomez for the last 10 or 15 minutes would have been actually a very good solution. You look at who was on the bench instead, a Dewsbury Hall and a Joao Felix who didn't play. That was a game that was never for a Dewsbury Hall or a Joao Felix. And you just thinking, well, is it maybe because he's a bit concerned about his defensive work rate potentially? Because he's actually improved in his last few games. I know he's not delivered on a consistent basis, but there have been signs of improvement over his last ones. I mean, what do you think of that explanation from him about it being a technical decision to leave him out?
Yeah, it's not the first time he's used it, has he? A couple of times now he's dropped it was a technical decision or from a tactical standpoint, I felt like it wasn't the right thing to do. I'll be honest with you. I think Maresca predicted that Liverpool game to go a little bit differently than how it went. I don't believe he thought Liverpool would sit back as much as they did. And I think for that reason, he felt like that would always be his substitution, would be Neto coming on. The thing that baffled me more than anything was when he actually realised he needed to inject something else into the attack a little bit later on in that half, he brought on Nkunku on the wing. And that was when I was like, if I was looking to bring on a winger, it wouldn't be Nkunku for me. It would have been Mudryk. And that's where I felt like Dewsbury Hall on the bench, Joao Felix on the bench. Is Mudryk not a better injection of something to that team than playing a player out of position? I'm not sure whether he just knows Mudryk's going to get 90 minutes midweek, but it just feels like, as much as I've criticised Mudryk, what I've seen in recent game weeks from him has sort of shown to me that there's a little bit of improvement there. And I actually think he would have been a valuable asset in that game. So just put on, even if it's for 10, 15 minutes, bomb it down the left-hand side, work his cross like he always does. If not, try and work a shot or just try and freshen it up a little bit, because he's always going to give 100%. It's just whether or not it's good enough with him. But I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure whether Maresca got his substitutions right throughout that whole game and squad selection. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, obviously he's not going to get it right every single time, but you kind of feel, and we discussed this with Don the other day, that like knowing that we had to make two defensive-minded subs in to take James and Lavia off, you're then limiting yourself a lot with your like other three changes that you're allowed to make, and maybe I know they both played well in the end, but maybe it could have been a bit smarter to maybe only start one of them and then bring them on. You know, for example, bringing a Reece on. That's a good option to have. That's a very good option to have. Maybe it could have been managed slightly better, but it wasn't a complete disaster. But it's not the first time, as you say, bro, that he's used technical decision. I just wonder whether, you know, it's a bit of a rotation thing. I really don't know, but he'll obviously play. I think he'll definitely play tomorrow night. And again, it's another big opportunity for him. You know, he's spoken about how, you know, Mudryk's doing well, Felix is doing well, but there's just unfortunately there's other players that are doing better. And that probably is the reality of the situation right now. These guys aren't necessarily doing badly, but we've just got other guys that are doing that little bit better. So, yeah, that's why for me this Conference League is a good thing, because we're able to give the players the minutes that we want. But I think when we get back into the Champions League, when you're not making as many rotations, that for me, mate, is where this squad and having this many players could be problematic. I mean, I know it's slightly throwing it ahead, but is that something you're potentially concerned about? But is that a potential worry for you, mate? Given we're making all these changes, but then when you go to a Champions League game, which we hopefully going to have next season, mate, you maybe make 2 or 3 changes to the lineup. You're not making 10, 11 changes.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think when you look at what we've been able to do in the Conference League, it sort of mirrors what most sort of clubs our size would do in the League Cup.
Yeah.
So we won't be able to treat, even the Europa League, we wouldn't be able to treat to the extent we've been able to do with the Conference League. I feel like a couple of selection hiccups might have come Maresca's way now, with obviously players missing out against Liverpool had been nailed on starters because of suspensions or actually not performing to the level he thought they might have. So maybe there's going to be less rotations for this one. But like we were saying just before we came on, there could easily still be 11. Like academy player could play out of surprise, or a player could have not started the game at the weekend. They could play in this one. I think going forwards, the squad will probably have had these players removed. But I mean, next season, say we're in the Champions League, Esteval comes into the equation, right?
And Pires as well.
And Pires potentially, if he stays, and Andre Santos, who's having a good season, comes into the mix in terms of midfield. You're just not going to be able to make the rotations that we're doing. And ultimately, the only reason Mudryk isn't starting against Liverpool is because he hasn't helped himself. If he'd have been our number one left winger, and there'd been no doubt about it, he's not looking at sitting in the box for a game against Liverpool. So it's kind of on him. But at the same time, a little bit of this comes down to squad building for me, because it's almost like we rushed to get Sancho at the end of the window. We panicked a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually think it's a really decent opportunity to sign a top player. But that's
exactly what it was, mate. Opportunity. And that summed up our whole summer window. Everything was opportunistic.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the recruitment has been, and it's also sometimes the risk, isn't it? If we get one and on the cheap, we can potentially move them on very quickly. The one thing for me with Mudryk is, we're talking about this as well in other positions, is the fact that by getting Sancho in, by buying Pedro Neto, you're limiting Mudryk's minutes to even have a chance of recovering some of the value for him, because every game he doesn't play in the Premier League, he's just losing more and more value. And I just wonder whether or not that's the right approach. But look, it's not my money at the end of the day, but it does baffle me as a strategy, because why would you want to devalue an asset that you're already struggling to get any money back for because of how poorly he's played?
No, mate, I agree. Look, I think a lot of the recruitment's actually been a lot better than a lot of people have given it credit for. Certainly, I've questioned a number of signings that have actually turned out to be all right. And I think I've sort of learned now that if we're linked with players, I'm just going to take a little bit of a backseat, because
there's probably a good reason. Like, I think it's probably that our scouts are actually good at their jobs.
Like, the scouts are decent,
Yeah.
Like, you look for example, I'll be honest, I wasn't that keen on Duran in the summer. I wasn't really overly keen on Omarodion either. Now, look, I'm not saying, by the way, that either of those would have been a success at Chelsea, because it's very hard to tell. But you look at the way Duran started. Look at what Omarodion's doing at Porto. It's refreshing to know that we are identifying the right types of player. And whether they work out or not, that's up to us at the end of the day, because all the scouts can do is identify the talents and identify the players. And then it's down to us to offer that development and to nurture these players and give them an environment in which they can flourish in. And that's all we can do at the end of the day. I know there's a lot of buzz around Esteban at the moment. And look, we're all excited for it, but you've got to remember, the kid's 18, right? Or 17, whatever. He'll be 18 when he comes. He's never played football outside of Brazil. He's completely upshifting his whole life. We've got to have very low expectations of him to begin with. And you actually don't know how good this guy's going to become. And we haven't really got that much of a track record of Chelsea being good at developing players from a young age into the prime years of their career.
Yeah, I think with our recruitment strategy and how it's sort of been, is we can definitely be in a position where we've doubted it because they weren't massive names, but actually time is sort of telling, the proof is in the pudding, if you like, with these players, that Duran is probably going to get a move come January, because his minutes to goals ratio is an absolute joke. I mean, Omarodion is scoring goals for fun at Porto. I think the only thing we have to be careful of as a side is, and as a fan base, is just not to count our chickens. You know what I mean? Like, these players look fantastic, but let's not bring them in with an absolute guarantee that they are fantastic in the Premier League and a team that should be challenging for trophies. That's what we have to be a little bit careful of. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they do all prosper. And, if you throw enough of these players into the squad, one or two of them are going to turn out to be a Cole Palmer and a Reece James. And then every now and then one might be a Mudryk, which you're sort of scratching your head at going, this kid looks so good. I actually don't get what we've done wrong. So hopefully we just get more hits than not, and it sort of works out in the long run. But I just wonder if we're trying to do too much too soon. We could definitely reduce our season spending by not panicking as much as we have done. We've got a big squad that I'm sure would be able to manage the amount of fixtures we've got, whether or not. We're sort of overloaded in a couple of areas and weak in others, which sort of
Yeah.
baffles me. I don't feel like it's been that balanced.
Mate, I agree. Look, I like a lot of the recruitment we've done, but you look at kind of the areas that have cost us sort of this season and in the past. We spent a lot of money on goalkeepers. We don't have a top class goalkeeper. You know, for the money we spent, we could have just signed one rather than signing like 3 or 4. And for me, we still lack quality at centre back. Now, I'm not saying I like Colwell, I like Fofana, but the problem we've got is, right, and as we saw against Liverpool, you know, you need that experience and that leadership at the back, because that is so important. So important. It's almost like, I know Kanate has been great, but it's almost like it wouldn't have mattered who'd played alongside Van Dijk. You know, we saw it with JT and Cahill. Cahill's actually a lot better than people give him credit for, but JT 100% made Cahill a lot better than he probably was. And I think we're in a situation right now where we could really do with like a Thiago Silva, with a Colwell or a Fofana playing alongside him. That's going to make them that much better. And you look at it and you're asking a 21-year-old and a 23-year-old to try and lead the back line and you know, and take this team forward. You haven't got a particularly vocal goalkeeper. You've not got a goalkeeper that inspires confidence behind you. That's quite a tricky position to be in. So I look at it and I think, right, okay, you know, the recruitment's not been bad, but it's strange that the money we spent in the summer, you know, did we need João Felix, Neto, and Sancho? Probably, I would have rather sacrificed one of those to sign either a goalkeeper or like a starting quality centre back. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So look, I'm not shitting on the recruitment, by the way. I think the recruitment's been decent, but I think there's one or two things where you're thinking, maybe instead of signing a Dewsbury Hall, for example, I quite like Dewsbury Hall, by the way. This is not a slight against him, but rather than signing a Dewsbury Hall, would that 30 million not been better off going towards a top class goalkeeper or going towards a top quality centre back?
Yeah, I hear that. I completely agree. And I think we sort of copied a lot off of Brighton's model. And I think that's evident for all of us to see, is that we're trying to actually be the team that recruits these players before they get to like a Brighton or something like that.
Yeah.
But the one thing we haven't copied from that strategy is they've done so well in recent years of acquiring a James Milner, a Danny Welbeck. They've still got Lewis Dunk. They had a veteran goalkeeper. I'm not sure if he's still there now.
Pascal Gross as well, that left.
Yeah, Pascal. Yeah. You know, they've had a very good mix of experience leading the way for these young players to come on and thrive, and the experience almost ended a little bit of the spider net. Now, I'm not saying we need to go and recruit Danny Welbeck and Lewis Dunk. No. I'm saying we should have had in this team a player of the likes of Thiago Silva in a number of positions, just so that pathway was there and that sort of winning mentality was there for these players to learn off, because the youngsters that are coming through are fantastically talented players, but we all know the addition of experienced players will help them tremendously. If you listen to every young player who's made it to the very top, they'll always tell you about players in their younger days who were icons to them that helped them navigate their journey through. I think about John Terry. All he speaks about is what Desai did for him. Yeah. Exactly, right? And I just think Levi Colwell, you can probably go and have a chat with him and he'll tell you all about Thiago Silva. But Nicholas Jackson, he's not got a Drogba to look up to. You know, he's only 22, probably 23.
23, yeah.
Exactly. But if he'd come in as a...
Even in Nkunku's not really that guy for him either, because it's not... He's not really... I mean, he's 25, 26 or whatever, but he's not even the same position. Like, we're not talking about go and sign a load of 35-year-olds that have been there, done that, got the T-shirt. But I noticed against Liverpool, you know, when you're looking at managing games, right, when things are difficult in game, you look at when some of the youngsters come on for Liverpool, right? Van Dijks, Robertsons, these guys, telling them, guys, just relax, slow the game down, take a bit of sting out of the game. We haven't got anyone that knows how to perhaps manage a game, and that's what you're going to get with a young team. You lack know-how, and you'll obviously learn and you grow from those experiences. But I just feel that whilst I'm happy with the direction we're going in, and I think this team is going to develop and be very good, it's also perfectly fair to say that actually, do you know what? With what was I saying now? With like the big games and stuff, and with the difficult moments, it's quite nice just to be able to, as a youngster, to turn to someone and know this guy's got my back. This guy's going to help guide me through it. We don't really have anyone who's Fofana, who's like Colwell turning to. Fofana, another young player, not massive, not a lot of experience. Who your Caicedos and your Lavia's turning to. So that for me is one area that I agree with you, mate. It's kind of lacking.
Yeah, and I think it would make a fantastic... Like, I think we would have won something last year had we had that in the squad. because we got so close without it. Had you had a couple of players to just be there in the dressing room, say, look, be a little bit braver, take this game to
We only
Liverpool a
had
bit more
one
than we
really in
have.
silver, innit?
Yeah, we had one, and I just feel like that wasn't enough, because I just think you need a couple of them, like you're saying, for a number of different players. Silva can't do it all on his own, right? But I think that's something that's probably the only thing that this model lacks. And I just think, actually, a lot of these players, 28, 29, 30 at a push, their contracts will probably be running down to a limit now, because as soon as you hit 30, it's like you're not even worth touching with a contract anymore. We could probably get them on a pretty decent, like, how we got Silva, how we've done it in the past with a couple of. I look at what Juventus do with their model, Inter Milan with free transfers. These players, it's not like they're bad players. And all right, they might not be worth a transfer value, but actually, if you bring them on a free, no matter what you pay them in wages, even if you move them on for 10 million the day they retire or move on in 2 years, you actually get something on the books.
Yeah.
So I just think.
This is a very good point here, bro. I'm not saying we're taking shortcuts, but it feels like in goalkeeper we've kind of tried to take shortcuts, and it certainly feels like, I'm not saying we're taking shortcuts at centre back, but the amount of money we spent on centre backs, your Badia Shields with the Sassis, etc. What have all top title winning teams got? What have all the big teams got? Top class goalkeeper and at least one top class centre back, and exactly like what
RC midfielder. I think.
Exactly what RC says in the chat here. Like, Klopp identified Liverpool needed a goalkeeper. They went and got Alisson and Van Dijk. They went and spent 150 million quid on the pair. Probably two of the best signings that Liverpool made in their history. And look how much difference that's made to them. And we spent way more than 150 million quid. I would have no problem, right, if in the next summer, for example, we spend 150 or 200 million, whatever it needed, on two players, a goalkeeper and a centre back. Or do you get what I mean? Like, that would elevate us to the next level. This team's got a lot of talent, and we're not a million miles away. But you just feel like that's kind of the missing piece. When you look at the spine of the team, what are we looking at right now? What would you say the spine is right now? Maybe you say a Colwell, and then maybe you say a Caicedo's part of it in the midfield, and you've got a Cole Palmer, and maybe you say a Nicholas Jackson. Maybe you've got four players loosely there as a spine, but the key areas. Goalkeeper, there's no spine. Top quality centre back. By the way, I think Cole and Fafana have got a lot of potential, as does Badia Shield, but he's not quite at it right now. Yeah. But there's no one at the back right now that's like at the peak of their powers.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what you need to. If maybe I think we might be rushing if we're talking about winning a trophy this season in terms of the Prem or a decent size trophy, because we're not even in the competition. No. But that's what you need to win trophies, and as a football club, that's what Chelsea have to be doing. And maybe it's just something that's been missed. It's something that they don't feel is a good investment. I'm not sure. What if you go and say we went and bought Bastoni as a centre back from Inter Milan, who I think is absolutely unbelievable. He's at the top of his game. He's Italian. There's a Maresca link there, obviously. I think he'd be a great addition to this side. If you were to do that, they probably don't see a resale value in him. And then I think that's probably where they question it. Maybe if you get a Calafiori, you get him for 40 million, there's potential in a player like that to move on to Real Madrid for 100 million. That's probably more what they're looking for, but he's still a very young player.
Do you think that's part of the problem though, mate? Not to get too sidetracked on this, but you think that's part of the problem though, that I get it, finances, numbers are very important in football these days, right? And if you're signing players, you would like them to have some sort of resale value. You're not like, for the majority of them, there will be. But I don't think there's anything wrong with signing a couple of players where there isn't much resale value. That's why I was so keen for us to maybe bring in Ivan Toney in the summer. There's no resale value there. But what's wrong with having the bulk of your signings like we're doing, but then sprinkling in maybe 2, 3, or 4 where there's not going to be an awful lot of resale value, but they come in, they do a job for you for 2 or 3 years, and then they move on. Like, what's wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing. And I think the main difference now is under the Roman era and under this new era is that one viewed those as important signings to make. I think a Michael Ballack and players of that sort of level to bring in who are at the top of their game on the European stage. That they're great for marketing. They're great for adding a bit of extra appeal. They lift the dressing room. They're high quality players. Whereas this new sort of generation now who are in charge, I just believe that every piece of recruitment, there's a number on their head and they're an asset, and it is ultimately a view to making more money. Because if you can buy, as much as this pains me to say, I fully believe that as much as Cole Palmer said he might not want to leave, they'll force his hand if an offer comes in of something so sizable. Because in any business world, if you can buy something for 40 million and potentially triple, if not quadruple its value, it's very difficult to turn around to your investors and say, I decided not to cash in on that one. Because they'll go, hang on a minute, that's our money, right? And that's the most extreme example. And I don't want to see Cole going anywhere, and I'm not advocating for that. But what I'm saying is, yeah, maybe, the likes of Jackson gets bought in on the cheap. They look to sell him, even if he's putting up fantastic numbers. And that's what worries me, is they won't make the signing that me and you see as crucial to this team going forward. Because at the end of the day, they can't turn around to their investors and say, oh, we bought this one for 80 million. And Chelsea did win a lot of trophies because of him, but you haven't made any money on that one. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not a great business pitch. And ultimately, I think the owners we've got now, I think they're focused more on that side of things than they are in terms of winning trophies and building a successful football club again.
Yeah, no, bro, I agree. It's a tricky one. By the way, big up everyone in the chat. Guys, make sure you're smashing the likes. We're on a pathetic amount of likes. This needs to be, let's get this to 100 likes, people. We're only on 39. That's piss poor. So, guys, make sure you're running up the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're new round here as well. And if you've got any questions, make sure you get them in the chat, and I will get to the chat. Don't worry. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on the game and stuff. Let us know your thoughts on anything we've discussed as well in the chat. But yeah, guys, make sure you're running those likes up. Let's get this to at least 100 likes. So please keep smashing the like button. And yeah, bro, let's bring this back to the Conference League then. I spoke to you about the Conference League. Obviously, we're disappointed really to drop into it. It's unfortunate. I remember saying at the time it wasn't ideal, but actually, I'm kind of, now that we've sort of had a few games, I'm actually grateful for it, because it gives us the opportunity to give players minutes that really need the minutes, and it provides us with an opportunity to keep players reasonably happy. I mean, bro, now that we've kind of had a few games and stuff, what are your thoughts on the Conference League in general and us being in it?
Yeah, gutted obviously that we ended up in it. I just think we're probably a level above it, and I sort of wonder whether or not that's a flaw with the system of how you get into the Conference League. But at the same time, I said last season, I'll take any form of Europe when we were sat in 12th, because I just felt like getting into a competition like the Conference League is great for these players to build some European pedigree, have a chance of going far in a competition, building up that winning mentality, which we all sort of questioned last year, whether this squad had enough about it. But it's like a dress rehearsal for the bigger competitions, if you like. If you can win the Conference League and you navigate some difficult fixtures, some really long, difficult away days, you might actually have it in you to go into the Champions League and be able to recall on experience that you've got. And all these type of games are so valuable for young players to just get experience. And I think that's the positive of the Conference League. I actually said before we'd sort of done anything in the summer and before we'd even kicked a ball, I said semi-final would be an absolute minimum. I think the more I watch it, the more I think that winning it is almost a failure.
Right, we're the best team in it by miles. And I know it doesn't guarantee you win the trophy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's not like the Europa League or the Champions League. Like, you look at the teams in it, right? And with the greatest respect, you haven't even heard of half of them. Admittedly, when you get to the knockout rounds, there will be one or two more difficult games that need to be treated with respect. But obviously, once we get through the league phase, we'll then add Cole Palmer, Lavia, Fofana back into the squad, because you can make the three. You can make 3 changes to the squad, which is great. But you look at the teams in there, and like we're comfortably the best team in it. I'll be honest, mate. I'd be surprised if a better team than us actually ends up playing in the Conference League. In the near future,
like Manchester United. I'm not saying they're better, but they're probably one of. Yeah. I just. It's such a baffling thing, isn't it? And that's why last season, with Unai Emery being Villa's manager, I absolutely had them nailed on to win that. And the fact there was a hiccup against Olympiacos just sort of shows
that winning it in the end, didn't they?
No, yeah, Olympiacos.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
That's what I mean. And Fiorentina were back-to-back finalists, and they still haven't won it. And I just think it's really difficult. These teams are going in as the favourites. Now, I'm not comparing us to Fiorentina. I think we're a level above that, and we're a level above, your likes of Olympiacos and teams like that. But Aston Villa are a very good side. They've beaten Bayern Munich. They're unbeaten in the Champions League.
I don't consider the goal, mate.
They couldn't win the Conference League, and that for me is with a manager, by the way, who is probably one of the best European Cup winning managers out there. Just hiccups can happen, and Maresca doesn't have the experience of Unai Emery in terms of winning European trophies.
Well, we've seen it, bro. We lost away at Servette. We actually just scraped through that too. We scraped through those two legs 3-2. Do you know what I mean? Like, whilst we're saying we should be favourites, like I agree with you, mate. Like you can't take any of these games lightly.
But at the same time, when you do the value of the squad and everything on paper who we are, our value of squad is the same as the other 35 teams in the competition or whatever it is. So it's absolutely ludicrous that if we weren't to win it, and look, hiccups do happen, but hopefully we navigate it pretty flawlessly. That's kind of what I'm looking at. I think the last game, even against Ghent, they actually put up a good test, but ultimately quality just prevailed in the end. But they were far better than what I expected them to be for a team that finished, I don't know if they were like 5th or 6th in the Belgian league.
Yeah, it must have been at least between 4th and 6th in the Belgian league. Yeah. But
because I've just quickly, Charlie, just to touch that. Some leagues, what they do is they'll say, like, if you finish top of like mid-table, you qualify for the Conference League, if that makes sense. So say you're like 14th to, I don't know, 8th, something like that. That's how their team will qualify for the Conference League. But the Premier League obviously does it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So like the big teams don't have a chance of going into the Conference League, which I don't know how you look at it is. But anyway, we're in it and we've got to try and win it.
Does an English team winning Europa League knock 4th place in the Premier League out of the Champions League? No, I don't think it does. No, you just get an extra team in there.
I think now,
I think now it's just an extra team in there. I mean, bro, let's throw this forward to Panathinaikos then. First away game in the Conference League proper. I mean, I don't know a lot about them. I had a quick check. They're 6th in the Greek league at the moment. They've obviously probably haven't had the best start to the season. But you know what it's like. Your Olympiacos is, your Panathinaikos is. Those grounds, intimidating atmosphere. That fans are going to be bang up for it. And for a lot of these younger players, it's going to be sort of a big learning experience. This will be a tough game, no doubt about it. It'll be a step up from Ghent, I feel. I mean, bro, what are your thoughts heading into this one? What are you, other than a win? What are you kind of expecting? What are you wanting to see?
I just want to see a couple of the frustrating things that we've seen in a couple of games gone by just sort of eradicated. I feel like we've not been great from set pieces. So if there's any set pieces, I feel like we need to do a little bit better. I think defensively, we've not been outstanding under Maresca, and I think that needs to change. We even conceded to Ghent, and these are teams that will look to sort of look at our weaknesses and favour their chances because they're probably built with experience. They're probably built in the traditional way that a team are built. And they'll look to rough up these younger players. And I just want to see growth and a bit of maturity on show and make sure that we navigate it really with ease with the quality that we've got. And players that are on the fringes, they really should be stepping up to a level above the Conference League. I think of Nkunku, João Felix, players like Mudryk. If they don't want to sit in a box and risk not being selected, then they need to be putting in performances that suggest they're worth 100 million or 60 million or something along those lines. Mudryk's gone for 60 million and Kunku's scored 40 goals in a season. João Felix has been a £100 million player before. These are all players that have been very highly regarded at points in their career. And ultimately, they're too good for the Conference League, so they should be showing it.
I agree, mate. It's kind of a mad situation, right? Where when we signed in Kunku, with this is going to be the guy. This is going to be our main guy. And you fast forward a year, and basically this guy is mainly playing Conference League minutes, and he gets about 10 or 15 minutes in the Premier League if he's lucky. It's kind of mad. But as you say, these guys have got to take these opportunities. Maresca's always banging on about it. You've got to make the most of your opportunities. And I look at someone like a João Felix, for example, who has been an unused sub twice in the Premier League, hasn't started a Premier League game yet. He scored 1 goal this season. And I remember saying at the time, people that watch the channel regularly in the chat, were getting on to me. I was like, look, I'm not denying this guy's talent, right? But for me, the reality of the idea of Joao Felix is far greater than the actual reality. And this guy's got zero output. He's one of them players that's pleasing on the eye, but then when it comes to, when you boil it, when you sort of dig into it, what does he actually do? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because he's got a lot of ability. But other than being nice to watch on the eye, what is Joao Felix bringing to Chelsea that we don't already have? I mean, bro, what were your thoughts on the Felix thing in general, and what have you made of his start so far? Because obviously, these Conference League games are going to be really his main chance to make an impression.
Yeah, it's exactly what I expected, to be honest with you. We kind of had the free trial, didn't we? And we thought, no, we like this. And then we tried and Poch didn't want him. And then we've almost gone back and been like, nah, maybe we'll give it another go. And it was opportunistic. And I think it only happened because of Conor Gallagher. Yeah. I think that's the main reason. Look, I like him. The fans like him. I don't want to be too harsh on him, but I'm not sure he's ever going to be that guy that Atletico Madrid once thought that he was when they signed him from Benfica for all that money. I just believe that he's the man before the man, you know, in terms of a game of football. When he plays, he's not going to get you the assist. He's not going to get you the goal, maybe every now and then, but he might play that pass that opens up the right-hand side of the pitch, or he might have a little flick in his locker. He's a little bit of a luxury player, if you like. And I think when I looked at the bench against Liverpool and you're chasing the game, you're never going to bring him on unless you're in a comfortable position and he's your fifth sub. I just don't see him ever coming on really in a game like we were against Liverpool. You're always going to look at Nkunku, who is clearly better in front of goal than him, clearly as good a footballer, if not better. And I just think there's always a limitation to Joao Felix, and it's that you're taking a risk every time you play him. So, yeah, look, in a European game, maybe he's acceptable to have on the pitch, but I don't know. I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but is he a position blocker for someone younger like Carney or someone like that, who I believe is a fantastic young talent who isn't getting minutes now because Joao Felix is in the side?
I was interested. You mentioned Chukwuemeka, right? And look, this is not me saying that Carney's better than Felix, by the way, in terms of like, you know, abilities and whatnot and what they've done in their careers. Obviously, you know, Felix is about 3 years older than him, done a lot more. But I agree with you, right? From what we've seen so far from Felix, and I hope it changes, and I hope I'm proven wrong. I've said that many times, but can we really say, like, hand on heart here, that what we've seen from Felix this season, Carney couldn't have done or got near to, or maybe even bettered? I don't think we can sit here and say that.
No, I don't think we can. I think the only thing I think back to was that game against Barrow, where I think Joao Felix showed his level, but that's against the League Two side.
Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. Carney scored an unbelievable goal at the beginning of the season against West Ham. I think the only thing might be potential durability. Is that when I looked at Joao Felix's profile now, there's not too many injuries there, whereas Carney is absolutely
it's glass,
right? So maybe that's the only thing, is his availability. I feel like Felix is in a very similar boat to Sancho. Both players I like, both fantastic players on their day. How often does their day come around? And if they do suddenly perform, I'm sure we might look to cash in, you know, and move these players on for more than what we paid for them.
But I would also say, though, like in the case of both Sancho and Felix, it almost feels like this for them now, Chelsea, is their last chance at a big club. You know, you look at someone like Joao Felix, who was great at Benfica, £100 million plus move to Atletico Madrid, never really happened for him there. And then he's just kind of been passed around like a game of pass the parcel between various clubs. No one really wanted him in the summer. And then we take him in order to sell Conor Gallagher. And you're just like thinking the same with Jadon Sancho. I like Jadon Sancho, massive fan of his, but given what's happened at United, you know, you almost feel like for both of them, this could be their last chance at a big club. And if it doesn't work out here, they'll have to take a step down in terms of caliber of club they're going to play for moving forwards in their careers. Obviously, that's a bit of a leap at this point in time. But I think the point very much stands that those two are very much, in my opinion, kind of last chance saloon in terms of opportunity at a big club. But one guy I wanted to touch on quickly, bro, Pedro Neto, obviously he started 2 Premier League games for us, wasn't great against Crystal Palace, and he was subbed at half-time in his other start against Bournemouth. I thought it was his best performance of his fledgling Chelsea career against Liverpool. He made a real big difference in that, and made a real big impact. I think he probably starts tomorrow night. Do you reckon it's a case of if he does half all right in this game, he starts Sunday against Newcastle?
Yeah, I was sort of wondering what would happen with him and tomorrow's game, because I just wondered whether or not he's pretty much nailed on now to be starting Premier League games. And with his injury history, do they even
Or would
risk
you
it?
start him instead of Sancho on the left? Because
Yeah,
because Madueke for me don't really deserve to be dropped on Sunday.
yeah, I don't think he does, and I don't actually think Pedro Neto has been his best when he's been on the left, but he did have a good cameo against Liverpool. And I feel like he'd probably be better off the right, but Madueke's not really doing much wrong at the moment. And I think we probably look a better team having both of them on the pitch rather than having Sancho on the pitch against Liverpool. Yeah, I wonder whether Jaden might play on Thursday and Pedro Neto's pretty much nailed on, because the one thing I don't want Chelsea to do with Pedro Neto, and they've been very good so far, is risk his injuries. And I feel like they've been good at managing players with their injury history so far. I think he's looking better and better every time I see him play. I feel like he's got to learn what this squad's about. And I think with time, we've seen how good he can be. A couple of seasons into that Wolves career that he had, he was their top assist maker. He understood exactly the type of runs players were making. You know, once he understands what Jackson's about and Nkunku's about and Palmer, I genuinely think you'll start to see a fantastic player. It's for me, it's we all know how good he can be. It's just how often can he be available for us? So would I risk him against Panathinaikos when he's as good as he can be? Probably not. I'd probably rather play Jaden, and Jaden's, I think after that game against Liverpool, I don't think Jaden was drastically bad, but I do think he might have to work himself into starting 11 again with some good performances
Do you know what's
elsewhere.
interesting with Sancho, right? I've seen a stat. He's had one shot in 4 games for us. And that kind of, for me, sums him up a little bit. He's creative, but we've almost got like the opposite issue here with Madueke and Sancho. Sancho, right, is too unselfish. He's always looking for the pass when at times you just want him to take the shot on more. And then with Madueke, it's almost the opposite. At times he almost takes on the shot too often when he might be better off passing. And you've kind of got two contrasting issues on either, I say issues, but like two contrasting situations on either side where Sancho doesn't shoot enough and maybe Madueke kind of shoots too often. I mean, bro, just on Sancho, why do you think he's so reluctant to have a shot at goal? Why do you think he's always looking for that pass?
Honestly, I don't know. And even when I have seen him shoot in previous seasons or previous sides he's been at, it waits till it's the perfect opportunity. So maybe it's just not something he favours. I mean, he's very technical and he'll always favour beating a man rather than shooting past a man. So I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I just think that's his style of play, and it's maybe something that they have to work on as coaches, because, yeah, you're right, there is a bit of an imbalance. The same with Pedro Neto, actually, when you throw it into the mix. I think it's 10 goals in over 100 appearances as a player.
Yeah, he's not renowned to be a goal scorer.
Yeah, they're not. None of them are really, and I think Noni is probably the best of the bunch when you look at those, because Mudryk certainly isn't putting up the numbers either. So, yeah, I just think there's a bit of work to do. I don't actually think any of our wingers are the finished article. And I think they've all got ridiculously high ceilings, but it's just a bit of work to be done in that field. I actually thought Noni was very good, and I felt he had the beating of Robertson all game.
I agree.
And I feel like we
got the ball out enough to him.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think we prioritised Sancho when actually Trent was having a really solid game. We probably should have looked to move that ball over to the other side, where Noni had Robertson for beating every single time. And we know if Noni beats Robbo, that Cole Palmer's likely going to be in a space as well with Noni to work that partnership like they've done already this season. So I don't know. I think they're all very good players. They all need a bit of work. And ultimately, I hope that it stays positive and these players develop into the players we think they can be. But they're all fantastically talented and gifted footballers, aren't they?
No, I absolutely agree. By the way, guys, make sure you keep smashing the like button. Let's get this to 100 likes. We're not too far away now. We've got nearly 100 in the building. So, guys, make sure if you've not smashed the like, just do it. It's free. It takes seconds, and it does actually really help out. Otherwise, I wouldn't bang on about it. So if you've not smashed the like, make sure you're running it up. And subscribe, as always, if you are new round here. Bro, to round out, we're just going to go through sort of a kind of a predicted team, little sort of a lineup that we wouldn't mind seeing tomorrow. We are actually, for the first time, playing in the third kit. Now, I've tried to colour it up here. There was no pink, so we've gone black and yellow. I know it's not quite black and yellow, but it is what it is. Jorgensen's going to play in goal. I mean, we've talked about Sanchez at length. We know that he's not good enough. We know that he's a liability. Maresca confirmed in the presser today that Jorgensen will play in goal. What do you think needs... I mean, one, mate, Jorgensen's played 4 times this season, the 2 Servette games, the Ghent game, and obviously the Barrow game in the Cup. I'll be honest, mate, that hasn't really taught me anything more about him whatsoever. What do you think it's going to take for Jorgensen to maybe get an opportunity in the league?
I think very similar to what happened with Petrovic last season.
Injury.
I think, an injury probably, because what baffled me is that Maresca's response after the game, actually bigging up Sanchez's performance.
Oh, mate, I couldn't believe it.
Look, you're willing to drag Sancho at half time and not really comment on that, and you're willing to like drop Mudryk completely, but when there's an obvious issue here, who I think's adding nervousness to the defense that's already not perfect, ideally you want to sort of remove that. My only issue is I don't know whether or not Jorgensen is the solution to that problem, because
we've got no idea how good he is.
We don't know. I mean, pre-season we didn't get to see much of him, did we? And what I've seen in clips of him at Villarreal, there was moments last season where he looks like a good keeper, but you just don't know, actually. So, look, hopefully that's what we get by the end of, I'd say by the end of this season, we probably have a better idea of what Jorgensen's about. We didn't know anything about Petrovic, and he turned out to be okay. Probably still not good enough. You know, that's why we bought Jorgensen and shipped him out on loan. But yeah, Sanchez for me is too much of an issue. I think in every game there's always a moment, and I just think you can't afford to have that as a team like Chelsea. So hopefully Jorgensen is on the right path as well. But
no, I agree, mate. We chatted about Akinpong earlier. We know there's no James and there's no Gusto, so it is going to be Disasi at right back unless something miraculous happens, which I don't think it will. So it'll be Disasi at right back.
Yeah,
bro, I think we've only taken 3 centre backs. We took Disasi, Badiashile, and Tosin. Well, unless you play Vega at centre back, but you're probably not going to do that. So, mate, the centre backs pretty much pick themselves. We've got. Yeah. I mean, mate, what are your thoughts on a Tosin and Badiashile partnership? I mean, Badiashile actually, in fairness, done really well when he came on against Liverpool. Tosin didn't have a good game. Does this partnership potentially concern you?
No, it doesn't. I probably expect them, whether that's better or playing back information that we've seen.
Bro, I think you've gone a bit crackly. Let me just, maybe it's me. Just say, oh, it was Dan. Yeah, no, Tosin was poor last game. There's no denying that. But yeah, Dan went all robot-y. He'll be back in a sec. He'll be back in a sec. Yeah, I mean the Tosin Badiashile thing's going to be interesting. I think Cucurella might play tomorrow as well, given that he was suspended for that last game. But then you'd also want Vega to potentially play as well. So it's a little bit of a tricky one, isn't it? You'd want Vega to play, but then you'd also want Cucurella to maybe get some minutes because he didn't play at all against Liverpool. So look, there's interesting decisions to be made, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens on that one. But I personally feel that I could definitely see him starting Cucurella in this one. I really could. I could really see him starting in this game. So I'm half tempted to stick Cucurella in, and when Dan comes back, we'll get his thoughts on a Tosin Badiashile partnership, and we'll also get his thoughts on whether we think Cucurella is going to start. I think that's a potentially interesting one. I mean, yeah, you could even go. You absolutely could. You absolutely could do this. You could play Vega at centre back. I mean, I don't know who misses out because I think that Badiashile and Tosin probably both need to play. But again, Tosin at centre back is definitely an opportunity. Or You could even play Vega as in midfield. You could play Enzo a little bit higher up. Oh, he's back now in the mix. Yeah, how we doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, well, I'm on the phone. I feel like my internet's gone, so I'm just getting this up. 1 second.
Yeah, no, it's all good, bro. No worries at all. Yeah, mate. So, what were you saying about the Tosin Badia Shield partnership?
Yeah, I just think those two paired with Dizassi bring physicality, to be honest with you. So I think I'm more than happy with that. I don't know the profile of player that Panathinaikos are going to have up front, but I'm sure they'll be able to deal with it, to be honest with you.
Mate, do you reckon there's... I mean, I've stuck Cucurella in here because he was suspended at the weekend. He's travelled. Do you think there's a chance he starts this game?
Yeah, potentially. I've been really impressed with Vega, and I wonder whether or not he's done enough to start. He probably hasn't, but I would say there is possibility that Cucurella plays. I wonder to make him travel all that way. Kind of makes me think you probably would play him, wouldn't you? Even if it's 45 minutes, I think he could look at
Yeah.
some minutes for sure. But he's probably nailed on to play against Newcastle, isn't he? So you don't want to risk him too much.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. I mean, just one thing. There's as Texas says in the chat here. Do you think there's a chance that maybe we could even see Vega at centre back?
I think there is. By the way, I'm not sure, but I definitely think the way when you look at the defensive options that he's taken, as you mentioned, it's very limited. So although
there's nothing.
Yeah, so I'm just not sure.
They've taken
five. Even pop up at DM.
Defenders. It's literally taken 5 defenders. That's it.
I think what it means is unless there are forced changes, it's probably likely, isn't it, that Badashile, Tosin, and Dizassi will play because likelihood is Levi Colwell and Fofana will play the Newcastle game.
Yeah,
Cucurella will probably play the Newcastle game, but may look at getting him some minutes just to make sure he's not leggy and maintain a bit of match sharpness. So. Yeah, I think there's flexibility in a number of those players. You know, Dizassi can obviously potentially play as a right back or centre back. The same with Vega to the left. Cucurella as well as a player that can and at times can deputise in a different role.
I mean, bro, there's even a chance that he could play in defensive midfield, Vega, and then you could have Enzo a little bit like Enzo playing as that more box to box guy, and then if it's Felix as a 10 or whatever it might be. There are definitely options there, but. I mean, moving into midfield, bro. Enzo is probably dead set to play. Gusto's not playing right back because he's not travelling with the squad. So that won't be happening. Bro, Enzo, how big a game is this for him? I would like to see him. I know Casadei has played the Conference League games and he's travelled. I would like to see Enzo played as the deepest midfielder to see what it's like. You have that same opinion?
Yeah, I'm in completely the same boat. I want to see him deployed as the 6, sort of in the role that we saw Lavia in for the Liverpool game. For what he's done in terms of when he's played for the Argentinian national team, that's a role that he's picked up. And I just feel like that's where he's best suited, to be honest with you.
How important do you think this game is for him? Given that he didn't start against Liverpool, I know it's a Conference League game. It's not the highest quality, but how important do you think this is? Nice, we back.
There you go. Right, I'm here. I'm back now. It should be all good.
Back. Yeah, sorry, bro. I'm just saying. I know, obviously, he didn't start against Liverpool. There's a lot of question marks around his place in the team. This might not seem like a massive game, but bro, how important do you think this is for Enzo? Do you think he's almost playing for his starting place on Sunday potentially?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure I expect him to start on Sunday unless there's an absolutely unbelievable performance here. I think Maresca's probably so impressed by what he saw from Lavia and Caicedo that there's no real option for Enzo to be starting in that midfield unless he turns it into a midfield 3. So Enzo has to be absolutely fantastic. The issue for Enzo is that the position we think he might actually be at his best, we're now absolutely stacked with. It's like we've got 3 midfielders of all very similar profiles and actually probably lacking more as with an attacking midfielder. You like.
I mean, I don't want to get sidetracked on Enzo, but I think he's great, and I'm a massive fan of him, and I really do hope it works out for him at Chelsea. But part of me feels almost that, do you think we rushed into this without maybe thinking about it?
Yeah, I think Enzo's another one that probably creeps into that sort of panic recruitment strategy that we had when Todd Bowley was in his stages as a sporting director, and he was probably off the back of the hype of the World Cup. He was the one of the players nominated for the Golden Boy. Yeah, I think we absolutely did. And when I saw someone, I think it might have been CB, do a list of 50 players that are better than him, and I couldn't disagree with one. And we've paid 100 and something million for him. It's look, I like Enzo. I think back to the Aston Villa away game. I think back to Liverpool. I think back to the Manchester United game where he was banging the crest. I really want him to do well at Chelsea. But I'm not sure I've seen enough consistency yet. From what is obviously a talented footballer, I'm just not sure where his future lies right now.
No, I would agree on that. Moving a little bit further on, mate, do you think it's pretty nailed on for Dewsbury Hall in this game? He tends to play Conference League.
Yeah, I think you can pretty much nail that on, to be honest.
I mean, mate, do you like, just on him quickly, like, do you just see him being a sort of a Thursday night player, really? He might get the odd minutes here. You might get the odd minutes here and there in the league. I just think it was a bit of a strange signing. I like him, but I'm just sort of thinking, well, what's he bringing that wasn't really, that we couldn't have already got from someone here?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was a signing that was obviously advocated for from Maresca coming from Leicester, because, you know, if it's his signing, you know, like Jorginho was with Sarri, they're an instrumental part of the team. So I'm not sure that Dewsbury Hall, and maybe he's a player that just has to bide his time. And look, he's a good squad player, isn't he? He's at a level that if he played a game in the Premier League against slightly lower opposition because we had a massive tie during the week, or, you know, a Champions League group stage match, you might get away with playing Dewsbury Hall as long as he's surrounded by better quality. And I think that's what his future may be at Chelsea. You know, he's probably not good enough to be starting every week, but he might have his moments. And I like him. Good personality. I think he's a good blend between a couple of players that we've let go. So, I wish him well. And I think actually the last Europa League game, we started to see a little bit more of what we might.
He scored, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he looked pretty good. So
I think the only thing I would say about him with his last two starts, Barrow and Ghent, is that he tends to start the game a little bit slow.
It was really a second half performance against Ghent, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. Well, it definitely was. I mean, just moving a little bit further forward. I mean, I've got it as an advanced number 8, but it really becomes a 10 pretty much. Do you think that's gonna be Felix, and he done the press conference? That pretty much indicates he's sort of, that player is probably going to start. We've spoken about him, so we don't need to say too much more on him. Mate, right hand side. Probably
this one I've sort of been to and fro with. I'm gonna say Sancho. I'm just not sure we risk Neto, because I think he's in line with a potential start of the weekend.
So we go Sancho right wing, and then Mudryk left wing.
I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah.
You know, Tyreek George started. Would you be shocked?
Yes, I probably. Yeah, shocked is probably a bit strong. I'd be surprised.
Right.
Yeah, I would be surprised. And then obviously Mudryk on the left, and then in Kunku down the middle. No chance for our boy Mark Guiu.
No, I don't think so. What I think might happen though
is I've forgotten about him. You know, I'll be honest.
He's had a couple of moments to make an impression, and he hasn't really done too much. He's still probably one of the youngest members of the team. So look, if he gets a few minutes, you know, he's got to take it in this competition. He should be good enough to be playing in it. He's probably of the level of some of the other teams centre forwards. So I think I look at it and I think, right, Felix potentially comes on at the weekend. So does he get a full 90? Maybe not. Does Nkunku get a full 90? Maybe not. Maybe that's where you get a moment for Chukwuemeka or Gui to come in and sort of make a bit of a statement in a very small cameo. But other than that, there isn't really too much movement with that team and the players that we're taking, because we're leaving 7 or 8 at home. Yeah,
well, exactly. And then Nkunku's going to play through the middle. Mate, just on Nkunku to sort of round out last couple of minutes, bro. What do you think he actually needs to do to get more minutes in the league? Because he's just not playing in the league. Well, I say not playing, but he started one game, the first game of the season against City, hasn't started in the league since, and he's getting very limited minutes from the bench in the Premier League. What do you think he needs to do, bro, to get more of a look in? Or is it going to require Jackson to have a drop off? Maybe Nkunku can't really do much more.
There was a moment where I don't think Jackson had scored, and Nkunku had sort of maintained his scoring form in other competitions, and Jackson was probably looking over his shoulder. But then, Jackson obviously scores in that game against Liverpool in what is one of his only chances of the game, and he manages to score it. So his conversion rate stays good. I like Jackson. I think he had something to his game that Nkunku doesn't have. I don't think he's as clinical as what Nkunku can be at times, but I think there are moments where Jackson's probably a better fit. I'll be honest with you. I don't know, Charlie. Maybe he has to score in the Premier League when he's coming off the bench to really sort of show that.
Well, that Forest game would have been a prime time with that chance to score. Like, it's
that's what I mean,
isn't it?
He's not even had 180 minutes of Premier League football this season. He's probably played 7 games in terms of appearances. So, it's tough. I wonder where Nkunku fits in, and he's another one for me that he's not going to be happy with his minutes. And if it gets to January and he's still looking at these kind of minutes, I wonder whether phone calls will be made or if it definitely gets to the summer, because he's a player that wants to be in that French national team.
Well, he's more than good enough to be a start. My concern, maybe it's a small concern, is that if we sign a striker, what does happen to Nkunku? Because the club believe in Nicholas Jackson. He signed the contract extension till 2033. Everyone's really happy with him, and I don't think we disagree with that. But let's say an Osimhen came in as an example, or whoever it is comes in, right? What does that mean for Nkunku? And people talk about, maybe Mudryk will leave. Okay, fine, but you're not just going to then shove Nkunku to the left wing. We know that Nkunku is not a winger. So you're then looking at it and you're thinking, right, well, if a striker comes in, where does this guy go? Like, do you honestly think potentially, like, maybe through no fault of his own other than being injured, that maybe Nkunku is an outside chance which could get bigger as the season goes on, that maybe he moves on in the summer, which would seem mad.
I'll be absolutely gutted, because I believe he's one of the only players in the squad that is at a level of quality that Chelsea requires to have in its team and in the starting 11. And I think actually there should be a way to work him into the 11. I don't know where it is in this system, but I believe if you're good enough, there's a way. The real issue I have is how are we going to let him go when we paid that amount of money for him? And he is one of those players that looks incredibly good in front of goal, and it only takes a second for him to score. I just think it'll be a failure on all parts if we don't manage to make it work for him, because he's a player that really excites me, and I think the fans want to see him do well. But yeah, I agree with you. I was listening to a French journalist the other day saying about how there's potential links that PSG return could be on the cards for him in the not too distant future if minutes don't start to improve at Chelsea. So yeah, it would be really disappointing, because I feel like he's never even really been given the chance.
No, I agree. It almost feels like he hasn't got started yet. The quality's there, but as we discussed the other day, bro, like he doesn't bring enough to the team. I know he's not the same player as Jackson, but he doesn't. What Jackson plays, because he brings a lot more to the team. And, you can't really argue with it. The guy's got 8 GNA in 8 games this season, 5 goals, 3 assists. Like, would Nkunku have done better than that if he'd started the games that Jackson had started this season? I'm not sure if he would have done. Does he even get in half the positions that Jackson does? Look at the game like West Ham. Is he making runs in behind? Is he running channels and that? He's not really doing that. So I know it's not his game, but I don't want to say Chelsea's not suited to him or Maresca's not suited to him, but Nicholas Jackson does offer a lot more to the team.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think when we're playing with a lone striker that we are, I've never viewed Nkunku as that. And I always feel like he's probably better as a second striker, number 10, who is incredibly good at scoring goals. You do, right? And the position I always look at is where Enzo Fernandez has been picking up a lot of positions in terms of that advanced 8 role that he's been playing. I feel like Nkunku in that position would probably cause a little bit more damage going forward than Enzo's capable of doing. But now with Lavia looking to be incredibly good, I think we're going to see a slight change in system there, with Lavia probably getting more minutes than Enzo Fernandez was getting, and Casado will probably be the midfielder that sort of looks to break lines. I look at the positions. Gusto picked up the ball against Liverpool, and I think if Nkunku had picked up the ball in those areas, would he have been as wasteful? But then you're sacrificing players defensively if you put Nkunku in that role and move to a back 3. Look, I don't know. What I do know is that there'll be a number of top clubs after Nkunku if Chelsea can't find a way to get his minutes managed. Because I look at the likes of Manchester City, I think he's a perfect replacement for Julian Alvarez and what they lost there.
Yeah.
I look at PSG, there's obviously a link to France that he wants to be playing for them. I look at Arsenal as the type of player that they could potentially look at him and they'll find a way to get him into their system. They're all a group of very versatile players. It worries me that we'd let him go to a team of a slightly similar level to us, if not better, and he'd thrive, because I do think he's good enough to do that. I don't see where he fits in Maresca's system right now, unless Noni Madueke or Cole Palmer's form drops off the face of a cliff.
Yeah, but even then, you're not going to play him right wing. And then, I would play him ahead of Felix, but I wonder if Maresca would play him ahead of Felix in that 10 role. I don't really know. But yeah, to round out, bro, score predictions tomorrow. It would be nice to get a clean sheet. It'd be nice to see a few goals. As long as we win, that's the main thing. But how are you expecting it to go? What would your prediction be?
Yeah, I'm going to say we score 3. I feel like away from home, we've been pretty good, unless they sit back and they merely... Do you know what? That's the thing, just quickly to touch on, that I'd like to see. If they sit back and they're really in a low block and they're defensive, I'd like to see us break it down, because I feel like against Forest and Liverpool, we struggled at times. So I'd like to say 3 goals and a clean sheet would be great, because we haven't seen enough of them this season.
No, I agree, bro. I'm going to go for a 3-1. I think we will score goals. I'll be honest, I don't know anything about Panathinaikos. I'm not really sure what sort of a team they are. They're 6th in Greece, so they're probably fairly average. But at home, the fans behind them, it'll be a massive game for them. Chelsea coming to town, it always elevates the opposition's level up a little bit. The players will find that little bit more from themselves. And they probably could cause us 1 or 2 problems. I think they will come and have a go, because it's not often that teams as big as us probably go and play Panathinaikos. So they probably will have a bit of a go. But I agree, mate. It'd be nice if they do sort of sit a bit deep and whatnot. It would be nice to see us create opportunities and break them down, because that's always something that's been levelled at us. And it's something that, even though we did break Forest down, we just didn't take our chances in that game. We didn't create too many against Liverpool. So even though it's a lower level of position, it's different players and whatnot, it would be nice just to see us create a few opportunities. And I agree, a 3-1 would be my prediction. Dan, we're going to round it out there, bro. Thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate it. If people want to check out what you do and all that stuff, let them know.
Yeah, it's BDB Dan on the YouTube channel and TikTok. But yeah, pleasure coming on, Charlie. I always like speaking to you about Chelsea. We're pretty level-headed and we have a good discussion.
Yeah, no, bro, we'll definitely do this again many more times. Guys, Dan's channel is tagged in the title. Make sure you subscribe to him. Go and show him some love. Loads of great content over there. Thanks for tuning in as always, people. Make sure you're smashing the likes on the way out. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel if you are new round here. I'll be back tomorrow night with a match reaction upload after the Panathinaikos game, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Then we've got loads of Newcastle content coming before the weekend as well. But love for the support as always, guys. Make sure you... enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good weekend and all. Have a good weekend. Fucking hell, it's Wednesday. Don't have a good weekend. But we'll save that for a little bit later, guys. We'll be back tomorrow. Match reaction, Panathinaikos. Enjoy the rest of your evening. All that good stuff. Dan, thanks as always, brother. And guys, we are out of here.